foreign exchange and exchange rate determination. Because what happens is, as we've been proceeding with what is international trade, international business environment, and then we have spoken about what is globalization, what is the modes of entry for a business to enter into international market. Then we spoke about the country risk analysis, what kind of risks will be there in different countries and how can that particular risk be analyzed. And we also spoke about foreign investment. How do people go about investing in the foreign countries, companies? After that, the next topic that is there in your material is actually related to this one, foreign exchange and currency convertibility. But for that, those topics for you to understand, you have to have a basic understanding of theories of international trade. What is international trade? What is balance of payment? What is balance of trade? What are the items which are there in balance of payment and balance of trade? And then you proceed with exchange rate determination and all, because basic concepts are explained to you therein. That is how I am proceeding to theories of international trade and investment. Then I'll tell you balance of payment and balance of trade. That go back to foreign investment and exchange rate determination in the further sessions which will be there. So today we'll talk about the various theories of international trade. Now, basically what happens is when the countries of the world are trading with one another, there are some grounding theories which will be there, which serve as a base for trade to take place. So when these grounding theories are serving as a base for trade to take place, who gave the theory? What is the theory all talk about altogether? In what way can that be applicable to different countries of the world, especially in India also, if you see which theory is more applicable to which country currently is having their dealings, depending on what kind of a theory is being adopted, or how did this entire mechanism of building a grounded theory for understanding international trade actually happen. So today's discussion, in the first part, we will speak about this one, which is related to theories of international trade. Then later we will proceed towards the the thing which is related to your balance of trade and balance of payment. Now coming to the theories, if you see it on the slide here, it talks about, various theories which are given across timeline. You have theories where you have explanations which are given at the national level, and then explanations which are given at the firm level. So when you say theories of international trade, this theory is explained to you at the national level and then at the firm level. So at the national level, we are talking about why the countries of the world actually trade. Then how can the countries of the world nations enhance their competitive advantage? Then at the firm level, through these theories, we are trying to understand how and why the firms actually go for internationalization. And we also try to understand how can internationalization help a firm to gain competitive advantage and sustain in the market. So that way, the explanations of any one of the theories that are there is from these two perspectives. The perspective of why nations, actually do trade, and how the trade is going to enhance their competitive advantage, and the perspective of how do firms go about doing internationalization. So there you talk about, the firm's capacity to go in for internationalization. And if internationalization happens, then how are the firms going to gain competitive advantage to over the other firms which are there in the market? So now let us see the various theories which were there. The first one talks about the classical theories, under which you have the 6 theories which goes there. And then you have the theories which are contemporary theories. And then you have theories which are to do with firm nationalization, and the theories which explain to you about the FDI explanations which are there. So those different set of theories are available to individuals. Now let us see discuss all these theories one by one. But before, let us understand the timeline of these theories. Which theory was given when, and who are the propounders of those theories? So we will speak about the timeline of these theories first. So if you see here the timeline of these theories, the theory of mercantilism is the first theory which belongs to your. So you got to remember, as students of management, you got to remember that which theory falls under which category. So when you say your mercantilism, absolute advantage theory, new trade theory, under which one does it fall? So you got to make sure about that. So here, if you see the timeline also which is being given to you, you have the theories which are being propounded across timelines. So the first thing started from 1500, where you have had the theory of mercantilism, which was being propounded. Propounded in the sense this is not actually a theory which is given by somebody, but this was how the market was functioning. So per se, it is not a theory as such given by anyone. It is how the companies have been, how the firms have been functioning in the international market. That is how this particular thing goes in there. So you don't actually associate this theory with anybody, but the theory is just a general observation, which is there related to how firms were trading in the international trade at that point of time. So you have mercantilism, which was prominent in Europe, and from 1500 to 1600, that particular those many number, that century, if you say. Then you have the later theories, which are given by Adam Smith, David Ricardo, Hexer Ohlin, Vernon, Krugman, Porter. These are the other theories which are being given over time, and these theories are given, some of them in Scotland, then in Sweden, and then in USA. So you see in Scotland and in UK, when you have Adam Smith's theory of absolute advantage between 1700 to 1800 century, and then you have got theories in UK, David Ricardo, comparative advantage. Then you have in Sweden and US the theories which came later, most of the theories coming from US, right from the international product life cycle, Krugman's theory, competitive advantage theory of Michael Porter. Michael Porter, you probably must have studied in other areas also. So there also Michael Porter five forces theory, which will be there, entry and exit, those things you talk about. And then you have these theories are across the timelines, and each one of them are expressing something related to international trade. So let us see what these theories are actually talking about international trade and in what context they are talking. So the first one is the theory of mercantilism. As I said, this is not a theory per se given by anybody, but this is just a general observation of how markets were functioning in the beginning, when international trade was actually being concentrated upon, and countries of the world thought that they should be having trade with one another, then how did this happen? So it was through observation that this theory came into picture, which is called as the theory of mercantilism. That was a practice. That was a practice at that time, and based on the observations from the practice, writers consolidated the observations, and then it is now being called as a theory of mercantilism. So you don't have one specific author to whom you associate this particular theory of mercantilism. Here, what they say is the nations of the world should do trade with those nations, and then try to maximize their exports and try to minimize their imports. Basically, the intention of the mercantilist theorists was related to how can a company gain surplus? How can a country gain surplus through exports from company? Because when exports happen, foreign exchange is being earned. When foreign exchange is being earned, it is not only a particular firm which is getting advantage, but the nation also gets advantage. So therefore, we are basically here talking about um, how a country can get trade surplus through encouraging exports. And people who supported, this particular idea of mercantilism, they all They all are people who are from labor unions because they wanted to protect jobs in their own country, people, farmers, because they wanted to keep the prices of the commodities high so that it can be sold high in the international market. Manufacturers who were producing domestically because they wanted to sell their products in the export through export in the other market. So, mercantilism usually revolves around the objective of seeing to it that a country's exports are maximized and imports are minimized. Thereby, in doing so, the company is able to make a profit or able to make a trade surplus by maximizing export and minimizing import. So, mercantilism talks about maximization of export, minimization of import. Through maximizing export and minimizing import, a particular country is able to make trade surplus. That was what was the ideology or the practice of the countries of the world, because at that time we are talking about 1718, we are talking about 1500 and 1600 century, where you talk about not many countries of the world connected with one another. Penetration of the sea routes and the roadways or the airways not too not too advanced at that point of time. Most of the nations were not even discovered. So whichever countries were there in the world, they did not actually do globalization as in today. So their concept of international trade was basically only import export. So export as much as possible and import as less as possible so that the country can have trade surplus. That was the viewpoint of people at that time during 1500 and 1600 when they spoke about the theory of mercantilism. This is the first theory which is there in international trade. As on today, this theory is irrelevant because the countries of the world are not only thinking about maximizing export import, but they are talking about interdependencies between the countries, gaining competitive advantage by utilizing the core competencies of one another. So all these things you talk about. So this theory basically at the ground level you can say okay because it is saying export import, but at a higher level this theory is no more applicable as such. So this is the first theory which is there in international trade. The second one that goes is your absolute advantage theory. So absolute advantage theory is one where you say that what is the ability of a country to produce goods more efficiently than the ability of another country to produce it, because this particular country in question has got superior resources when compared to any other country. So because a country is endowed with superior resources, they have a direct advantage of producing that particular product. Like examples are being given. Brazil famous for coffee. Africa, for that matter, is also famous for coffee because naturally they are endowed with that particular resource. Saudi Arabia for oil resources, the whole of Gulf, you see, for oil, Canada for hydroelectric power. So these countries are rich in these resources and they will get a direct advantage by concentrating on utilizing these resources so as to produce the commodities which can be sold to the other countries, because other countries don't have these resources. Like you talk about Saudi Arabia and oil exports which take place from Saudi Arabia. Nations of the world do not have oil refineries or the natural resource oil under their earth's crust. They are being endowed by nature by that particular resource. So utilizing that resource, they would have an absolute advantage. So this theory of absolute advantage says that let the nations produce those commodities efficiently, which they can produce when compared to other nations because they have got the superiority of resources. They have got resources with them. Hence, using those resources, they will produce the commodity. So a country, it says that, any country should produce only those products where it has a direct and a clear advantage. Because, the other resources and can produce using fewer resources than any other country. So that concept of having a direct advantage and superior resources with you is called as your absolute advantage of production. So you have, all examples which are being given like in Brazil and Saudi Arabia, Canada, like that. You talk about, examples from many parts of the world also, where you have countries which have got absolute advantage. If you say where does India have absolute advantage, as of now, we can say India has absolute advantage in terms of, not a natural resource, but in terms of the indigenous technology that we are developing, software. So in that particular sense, we can say most of the software that is being developed is being used for daily operations in many MNCs which are there. So that way, you better produce. You better have those softwares made in your country, where you have an advantage when compared to the other countries of the world which are there. This theory is called as your theory of absolute advantage. This was given by Adam Smith. We all know, right, Adam Smith as the father of economics. So he gave this theory where he very precisely calculated, as to why should countries of the world concentrate on this particular thing of related to your absolute advantage, because they have got resources with them and those resources are superior. So let them make use of those resources in order to produce the commodities which they are able to produce, rather than the commodities which other countries need to produce using fewer resources which are there. So absolute advantage theory, that is the second one given by Adam Smith. The third theory that you have is the theory of competitive advantage, or sorry, comparative advantage, where this theory is given by David Ricardo, where he talks about two countries and two countries competing with one another. So when you say countries of the world and how do these countries of the world engage in trade with one another, we are saying that it is beneficial for two countries to trade only if one country has a direct advantage of producing all the products. So it is not an absolute advantage, but it is a relative advantage. So it's not a clear direct advantage that you have, but it is a relative advantage or relative efficiency that you have got in order to produce that. So this comparative advantage that is called, it may come from a natural resource or nation's policies or talent that you have in your country, human resources, all the firms acting together in the interest of international trade. It can be anything. So you have example here, say here, sorry. So when you say an absolute advantage, the previous example also, when if I got to take, say days required for production. If you take example of clothing, a labor would require 2 days in Italy to produce and 6 days in Spain to produce. So here you can say that less number of resources are consumed in which country. That country has got a direct advantage in terms of producing clothes. So you see here Italy. Italy has got the absolute advantage of producing uh, only in 2 days the cloth, where Spain is taking 6 days to produce that. So this is an example of your absolute advantage, which is there. But when you come to your comparative advantage, you talk about not one item, but you talk about multiple items, because in international trade, you don't trade only in one item. You buy something, you sell something, and at that point of time, prevalence of barter system also was there. Because usage of currency and all, at that time you had, barter system also which was prevalent. So you produce something in which you are good at, you give it to somebody who produces something else which you are not good at. So you see Italy and Spain here. If Italy is good in producing clothes in 2 days, Spain is actually good in what sense? So therefore, you will make a comparison of it. So clothing and shoes. So Italy is taking 2 labor days to produce clothes and 4 labor days to produce shoes, whereas Spain is taking 6 labor days to produce clothes and 10 labor days to produce shoes. So just by looking at this, you can come to know that which country has got more advantage over the other in production of both the items, be it clothes or be it shoes which are there. So when countries do not have the ability to efficiently produce any commodities, it is better that they produce that commodity which they are efficient at. Rather than putting their hands in all products, it is better that you concentrate only on such thing which you are good at. That is what comparative advantage says. So let the other thing be produced by somebody else. So if you are good at one particular thing, you better do that particular thing. So if you see here the example that comes, so you can maximize your economic success by focusing on those industries in which it is most advantageous to you when compared to other industries. So here as an example is taken for Italy and Spain. So they both can make clothing and they both can make shoes. नहीं, they both can make clothing and they both can make shoes. Um, so Italy is able to make both cheaper than Spain. So for whom it would be, efficient. So you basically calculate in terms of not only taking time taken, but also in terms of cost. So time taken and cost. So now you are taking two parameters and then you are saying which country should specialize in which one. So there you will decide in case this country has got a specialization in production of cloth, but what is the amount that you are spending in production of cloth? So that way you take into consideration your absolute comparative advantage. I'm sorry, not absolute, comparative advantage, because you're comparing yourself with what a kind of resources are there in the other country, what kind of amount is being spent by that country in producing, right? So based on that you will take into consideration um, your comparative advantage, which country is more advantageous when compared to the other country. Just give me a second. So comparative advantage, you still can understand, it applies not only to goods, but also to services, where a country has to think as to where are you more better and where are you more also economical. Economical also and efficiency wise also you are good. Both the things you have to take into consideration, not only in terms of efficiency, but also in terms of cost. So in terms of cost and in terms of resources that you have got, how efficient are you in producing a particular thing? Based on that, you produce that and leave the other things to the other country in which they may be having expertise. So when you do that, you will be able to focus better on your items and make your items more visible across the countries of the world, and they will know you as an efficient producer of that particular product. So if you see here Japan being good at making cars and smartphones and all, then they can concentrate their resources on either one of the thing, make car or make smartphone. Then there are also countries in the world like China and Korea who are very good at making smartphones. So let the country Japan make use of their resources to get the best of the automobiles to the world, and let Korea concentrate on producing smartphones to get best of the smartphones to the world. So that way countries should think about what resources they have, what capabilities they have, what cost is incurred by them in producing a commodity or a service. Let them concentrate on that and let the other country do the other work. So you because you are not expert at everything, so therefore you will not be having an advantage in producing everything and giving everything. So your advantage of comparative things will come only when you have, and when you are able to compare your efficiency, your resources, and your cost, produce those items which is sustainable for you. Let the other countries produce those where their cost, their efficiency, and their expertise matches. So that way you have comparative advantage, which is being gained by both the countries, which will make them competitive in the market which will be there. So here comes the word now competitive advantage also. So you have competitive advantage here where you talk about, what are the distinctive capabilities that, the assets, the capabilities and competencies that a particular company has over the other companies. A particular country has over the other countries. So a competitive advantage basically will explain to you about, the strength of a country's of all the companies put together in a country, which will give the country itself the strength. So you are talking about distinctive assets, competencies, capabilities that a company develops and acquires in relation to its competitors. So that particular competency, asset, or a capability will give advantage to that company over other companies. Same way, these companies are present in a country. Because they are present in a country, these companies will pass on the advantage to the country also. So you have abilities which the companies have got that will make the country also more competitive, more advantageous when compared to their other competitors in the market. So from comparative advantage only comes the word competitive advantage also, where this is uh, where you are, this is not a separate theory, this is a concept. The theory is comparative advantage only. So we first discuss mercantilism, and 1500, 1600, then 1700 we talk about absolute advantage theory, Adam Smith, then comparative advantage theory given by Ricardo. Then you have competitive advantage as a concept under comparative advantage as a concept there. So when you have competitive advantage as a concept there, you are talking about firms or companies in the world which have got certain distinctive capabilities. Those capabilities may not be there with other firms because they have those capabilities, assets, or efficiencies which are there that will make the nation also competitively advantageous over its other nations in the world. So you have examples of, Dell, which has got advantage in supply chain. Unilever, HUL has got advantage in terms of, international marketing and international distribution. Samsung has got advantage in terms of a technology where they can make flat panel TVs. So when you have these companies which are placed in their respective countries, so you would say, they will give advantage to US, they will give advantage to Korea, they will give advantage back to their own countries. So that way you are speaking competitive advantage as a concept there. So you have this as only as a concept. This is not a separate theory, okay? So this one is one. Then you have the next theory, which is called as factor proportion theory. This is now a little movement from classical to the neoclassical and the modern ones, where we are proceeding with the factor proportion theory. Factor proportion theory was given by economist Hexer and Ohlin. These are two different people, Hexer, Ohlin. They gave factor endowment theory. These theory says that each country should produce and export those goods which are intensively using the factors of production which are absolutely in abundant to them, and import those goods and services which are intensively using scarce resources that they don't have. Those resources they don't have, if they produce that commodity, those scarce resources will be intensively used in production of that. So therefore, let the country produce those commodities where the factors of production are available in that particular country. Give me 1 minute, please. There's some disturbance there. Right. So you have this one which is called as the factor proportion theory, where I was telling to you that, factor proportion basically talks about let the countries of the world produce those commodities where the countries have that factor of production with them. Because if you have a commodity where the production is in scarce for them, then then they cannot say that they specialize in that, because that factor of production is not available to them. So therefore, let the country concentrate on producing and exporting that commodity where it is using that particular factor of production which they have in abundance, rather than producing that commodity where they don't have factor of production. So let them import those goods where you have to use that particular factor of production which is scarce with you. So I have a factor of production which is in excess with me. So let me produce and sell, that is export, that commodity which uses that factor of production. If I do not have a factor of production, then let me import that commodity, because that factor of production, which is necessary for producing that commodity, is scarce for me. So here you're talking about the factors of production which are necessary. That's why you say factor proportion theory. In what proportion are you using the various factors which are endowed to you, depending upon what country you are. The factor can be a natural factor also, the factor can be man-made factor also, which can be there. So therefore, depending on that, whichever factor you have, let you produce based on that factor and leave and import based on those products where other countries have got those factors of production. So this you can just say, it's an extension there, where you are saying that absolute advantage, you said, no, where you say let them produce what they have and leave the other things to the other country. Here you are more precisely going a little backward and integrating it and saying that factors of production. So therefore, based on factors of production. So here you have example of countries of the world which have got land area, and these countries, land intensive means they can cultivate that particular land. So based on cultivated land, they can produce crops, or they pick the land and then they search for any minerals and all, forest products and all, and then they utilize that land intensivity of that particular factor land, and let them produce. Like how India has got huge labor, which is cheaply available here and which is also very skilled. So let India engage in activities which are labor intensive and produce labor intensive goods. So that way, that particular factor, we understand, no, factors of production: land, labor, material, and capital. So let these factors be used by the countries. Like some countries of the world are very good at this one. What do you call? Capital. So they have huge amount of foreign exchange reserves. They have a lot of money with them. So they will be engaging themselves in capital intensive industries. Countries like India, where labor is more, we can engage in labor intensive industry because that factor is abundant for us. Similarly, countries which have got huge land with them, they can go for agriculture, cropping, cultivation, organic things, or fishing, because if they have huge amount of water bodies with them on that particular land, they can do all those activities. So factor proportion given by Hexer-Rohlin, which is also called as Hexer-Rohlin theory. So don't be confused in the exam if they ask you factor endowment theory, Hexer-Rohlin theory, factor proportion theory. All three mean one and the same only. They are nothing but factor theory only, which talks about in what proportion these factors have to be used. Then once you determine these factors, you determine, how competitive the nations of the world are, depending on the factors that are there with them. So you have the global competitiveness, which is describes. This is according to the World Economic Forum, where you have, the global competitiveness based on what kind of factors they have. So whether the economy is driven by the factor, whether the economy is driven by efficiency, whether the economy is driven by innovation. Some economies in the world, no, they don't have factors of production. Land is not there, capital is also not there, but they are very good in technology, and they are very good in doing business, innovating. So then such countries of the world, you call them as, innovation driven. So based upon competitiveness, you call the countries of the world as your factor driven economies, economies which are driven by efficiency, and economies which are driven by innovation. So if you see the sub indices which are there under each one of these index, in a factor driven economy, your concentration is more on institutions, infrastructure, health, and primary education, and the understanding of the macro environmental factors. If your economy is driven by efficiency, then efficiency coming to the market of goods, to market of labor through education and training, efficiency coming for being technically ready, and utilizing the market size which is being there. So you have efficiency driven economies and economies which are driven by innovation, where you say business sophistication and innovation coming to picture there. So your depending upon the kind of factors that you have got, you have countries of the world which are given like this. So you see the top 10 countries in the world and the least 10 countries in the world, which are competitive countries. You see, I was telling you the other day also, Singapore is such a small country, but it is very high on competitive index. You have scoring, which is being given based on the different parameters that you have got. Based on that, you have scores which are allotted. India is far below, in the score, somewhere in the bracket of 180 to 106. It keeps jumping up and down. So there's a lot to attain for India also to climb up for the competitive ladder given by the World Economic Forum, which is there. Then you have what makes nations competitive. So from where does this competitiveness come? So you see innovation and productivity. So you innovate and the competitiveness comes through innovation, or you're very good at productivity in terms of reduced cost of production, in terms of labor efficiency. So your competitiveness comes through there. So that way, from where is the competitiveness of a country being derived? You talk about, innovation and productivity. So key resources or key sources for nations competitiveness. Yeah, both of them. So the source of a nation's competitiveness can be either through innovation, where how well are you able. You have innovation theory given by Schumpeter. So if you have seen the theory somewhere, well and good. But Schumpeter talks about the innovation theory in terms of how can countries innovate. He says countries can innovate by producing new products, by inventing new methods of production, by identifying a new way of managing, or by identifying a new market. These are the five things where we study Schumpeter's theory. So he says theory of innovation. According to him, those are the five ways in which a countries can innovate. So here, when you say from where does innovation come, you would say innovation would come, through new ways of production. Innovation would come through new product that you're altogether producing. Innovation would come from new sources of raw material, new methods of production, exploring new markets which went unexplored earlier, nay, which went unexplored earlier. So all those things will become a source for you to go for innovation. So your source of competitiveness will come from innovation. Then your source of competitiveness can come from productivity. How well are you in producing? There are these countries of the world, where they produce beautiful products which are of top standard, given by ISI, International Standards ISO, International Standard Organization. Even in India also, you have got agencies which do standardization and benchmarking. So there also your competitiveness will be derived through how productive are you, use less resources to produce more. Resources could be labor, could be capital, could be material, all of those things. So here will be the sources of competitiveness which will come. Then let us see what the top competitors who are there. You have all these examples. I know, this keeps changing depending upon which country, which company has become more competitive. So you see in China, they make machines, Sani Heavy Industries Company. In France, Airbus, when we travel through aircraft, Airbus, if you climb, no, you will not climb on any other this thing. Most of the flights which are being made by Airbus, they are just world class. So you have France having that caliber in making those Airbus. Germany, you have automobile also and energy. In those two aspects, you have got German cars. They are so popular in the world. So you have Germany, India, as I was telling, technology and software. So you have software. You have Infosys as one of the leading player. Wipro also joining it. TCS also is there. Then in Japan, you have automobiles which are being made. Toyota's cars being very good in terms of the fuel efficiency and maintenance, low maintenance in the cost and all. So they are good at that. Switzerland pharma, India also pharma would be there. So you can add pharma near India also. Switzerland also pharmaceuticals because they have the largest seller with them, Novartis, which is there. Then you have UK. UK controls, UK has got so many banks with them. One of the leading international banks which are there, where Indians also have money in UK's banks. So Barclays is one example. And US, you have technology, which they take care of. You have all, IBM, Dell, and Oracle, and all these people from US only. So and they have become competitive. Same way, you have the global index of the rankings which are being given. These are released every year. I didn't update this as of now, but you see the top five. It goes with the top five only. That up and down it will go, which is the most innovative country in the world. So early one was competitive country. This is innovative one, right? Competition index, innovation index. This is related to your productivity. That was the second theory to do. I'm sorry, that was the movement from the classical theories to the neoclassical and the modern ones with Hexarohlan theory. So first, to recap, we talked about mercantilism. If in an online class, it is very easy to interact with students and then have a face to face. I can also gauge the attention span of individuals and ask questions in between and ask them to explain. But the online class, the thing is, it is only monologue, one side, and then I thought somebody could recap. Then I thought, okay, this is an online class. Then I thought, okay, this is an online class. Right. So mercantilism, where we speak about maximize import, export, minimize import. The theory, it is not a theory, I told. It's only a practice. Observing what were the practices in the international market. Countries concentrated on maximizing export, minimizing import. That was first one, mercantilism. Second, absolute advantage, given by Adam Smith, where he said, let countries concentrate on producing those items where they need resources which are with them and they have a direct advantage in producing it. Absolute advantage theory. And let them not produce those which they don't have resources so that they don't have direct advantage. Then came comparative advantage. Two countries have got resources to produce, but which product should I produce? Produce that product where you have resource capabilities and also economical, and compare what should you produce and what should you not produce in terms of time, energy, resources that you have got. Comparative advantage. From comparative comes competitive advantage concept. Then comes factor theory given by Ohlen, Hexer and Ohlen, where they speak about let the countries of the world produce those products and export them where factors of production are in abundance to produce that, and import those where factors of production are scarce with them. So they concentrate only on producing those for which they have factors of production. From that came competitive index and innovation index under your Hexarohlan theory, and three types of economies: factor driven, efficiency driven, and innovation driven. This is just a quick recap of the theories that we completed so far. Next, coming to Michael Porter's theory. Michael Porter said Michael Porter's theory got revised again and again by Michael Porter himself and by others. Even today, this theory is very relevant when you talk about competitiveness of firms and even nations of the world, international trade. If you see the diagram there, this is also called five forces model, diamond model, because it looks like a diamond. And in between the block that is there is actually competitiveness of the firm. So you have these things which are impacting the competitiveness of the firm. So because it looks like a diamond, it is also called as a diamond model. You call it as Porter's five forces model or Michael Porter's theory of international trade. Here you have the four factors which are there, and depending upon these factors, you have the theory which was being explained. So sorry, it went muted. Now, in this diamond, if you see, you talk about the factors which have to be examined by any country and by firms when they decide to do something or they decide to enter into a competitive world or a competitive scene. What they need to concentrate on these four items which are there: demand, who are the related industries which are there, because they also produce substitute products, what kind of factors are do you have, and what is your strategy, structure, and what kind of a rivalry do you have. Explaining this one by one. The first one, factor conditions. Factor condition will talk about all the factors of production that you have: uh, labor, capital, machine, material, technology, capabilities of people, efficiencies, all factors of production which are there in a country. So you would say India and China has got the factor in terms of very low cost and educated workers, which will they give these countries advantage over other countries in whatever activity they will do. So that is the factor conditions which are there. Second thing to remember in Michael Porter theory is what is the firm, what strategy they have, what structure they have, what kind of rivalries are there. Domestic rivalry and international rivalry of the firms are different. In within your country, when you're competing with the other firms, you're competing within the same environment. When you leave the environment and compete, now you are exposed to a larger environment which is beyond your control. So the nature of domestic rivalry naturally will be there. Apart from that, what kind of rivalry will come with the other nations? Rivalry here is not to do with war or fighting. It is to do with business rivalry, competitiveness. It is to do with how one business competes with the other, and that's how they become rivals to one another. So what is it that will determine the firms to be created, to be organized, and to be managed? If you see, you have example here, France, which has got one of the top companies to do with fashion industry like cosmetics, clothing, and accessories. You have so many brands which come from France. So here, when you're planning to enter into this industry, your competition now will be from all these giant companies which are there in France. So you will have to now constantly do something innovative so that you remain as a leader in the market. The companies which are in France, they have to constantly do something in the market and innovate so that they don't lose out on their leadership position in the market. Because in market, when you see whether it is domestic or international, um, you basically have four types of positions which are there: leader, challenger, follower, and niche marketer. So when you say leader, you should be very cautious that you don't commit mistakes and lose your leadership position. So firm strategy, structure, rivalry will come into your picture there. Then you have the things which are related to your other two in the diamond model. uh, what is the demand conditions? What are the demand conditions? So the strength of your product comes from the demand in your market. So what kind of a strength do you have within your not sold very well in your own country, then how will you position that in the international market? So, what kind of demand conditions are there in your own country? That also plays a very important role in your international trade. Then, what kind of relationship do you have with the supporting industry? The supporting can be both complementary industries as well as substitutes which are there in the market. So, do you have integrative capabilities to integrate with your suppliers and competitors in your country? Or do you have on your activities which are there? Some connection issues there. So, what kind of supporting industries do you have in case you want your industry to grow? Uh, that becomes essential there. Right. So you talk about, your related industries which are there, which are giving support to your industry. You talk about the related industries. For example, if you are a company which is manufacturing cars, then for you to manufacture car, you need, iron and steel industry to be very good in your existence, and you want the rubber industry to be good so that you make the wheels of the car, or you buy from somebody and assemble it. So these will be the related and supporting industry without whom your industry cannot flourish. So your competitiveness is also determined by the presence of what kind of related and supporting industries are present. These are a part of your theories which are related to your Michael Porter diamond model. Then, stemming from this, you have a concept which is called as industrial clusters. Industrial cluster is nothing but similar to that of your supporting industries which are there, where concentration of suppliers and supporting firms within an industry. So within an industry, you can have suppliers, and you can have competitors, supporting industries, who can come together and they can form some kind of clusters which will be there. You call such a setup where you have concentration of suppliers and supporting firms within an industry. You call it as a cluster. Cluster is nothing but collection, right? Group. So therefore you call it as a cluster when you have supporting industries and suppliers who are together. So you see clusters which can be there in different industries which are there. So fashion and cosmetic clusters in Paris and France, clusters of all software companies which are there in US. You have a cluster of IT companies which are there in southern India, as you know, Bangalore and Telangana, being the hub of IT industry. So you have clusters which are being formed. So many industries are there, no? So many companies in high tech city which you could travel towards. You that itself is a cluster of all IT companies which got a base there. So you have industrial clusters as a concept there, which is stemming from your Michael Porter's theory. Um, Next theory that you have is in relation to firm internationalization. How can the firms think about internationalization? Now, in going international is a process. So it's not a one-time activity. You just cannot go international at one go. So when you have the process of internationalization, you can have internationalization being done depending upon where you are. So if you are born global, or what is the process of internationalization that will happen? So firstly, in internationalization process, you have to have first a domestic focus within your country. Once you establish base within your country, then you can think about exporting to other country. When you think about exporting to other country, then that is your pre-export stage where you are preparing yourself to export. Then you think about involving yourself on an experimental basis, then actively involve, then you're involved fully, committed involvement, which can be there. So, in case a company has, say, for example, tomorrow any one of you can become an entrepreneur and start a company. So, you start a company in India, in Hyderabad, that will have a domestic focus. Now, your base is strong within 5 years. Now, you want to think about exporting. So, you start preparing to export. So, documentation, processes, licensing, and all that, you will get clearances. When that stage is over, you start exporting, and on experimental basis, you go to other countries. Maybe you choose 2, 3 countries in the world, and then you start going to selling your product in those countries. Once you know that response is coming good from those countries, then you will actively involve with the other countries also, not only through export, but you may develop a wholly owned subsidiary, you may get into a joint venture, you may get into a strategic alliance, all things which we discussed yesterday. Then your involvement will now be total in the international market. So that is your committed involvement, which will be there. So a firm can go about internationalizing itself by proceeding towards all these theories if the firm is domestic in nature. But what if the firm is born global only? That means when you started as an MNC company only. You didn't start as a domestic company. Your start itself was an MNC. So when you started also as an MNC, first to focus in the country in which you started, which is called country of origin, and then you start actively involving in the other countries which you have chosen to get involved, and then finally involve fully with those countries which will be there. So you have born global, and what kind of entrepreneurship is there in those countries. So as I was giving example, tomorrow one of you may become an entrepreneur. So when you become an entrepreneur, whether you run a medium size enterprise or a small size enterprise, it all depends upon how many number of people you employ, what kind of turnover you have, and how much amount of investment you have. Here, international trade is big because we are basically talking about international entrepreneurship. So we are talking about number of employees who are involved here. Then you would say more of your production goes as export. So one third of total export. So more value that you're attaching is towards exporting that you are doing. So that way you can call yourself as an international entrepreneur when you undertake your activities in the sense that you have a domestic focus, then you prepare for export, actively then engage through a complete commitment. A number of people that you employ is around 500, and then exports that you do. So that way you talk about international entrepreneurship. So these are the ways, how international entrepreneurs are being born, in terms of how they are small and then they are young and then they go about internationalizing. So you have to have all these orientations. Adaptability is also very essential when you say international entrepreneurship. These are all a part of your theories which are related to internationalization. So, quick recap: mercantilism theory, absolute advantage theory, comparative advantage theory. From there comes competitive advantage. Then you have Hexarollin factor theory, where you study about competitive index and innovation index. Then comes Michael Porter's theory. Coming from Michael Porter's theory, you speak about industrial clusters. Then comes your firm internationalization, where you speak about the concept of international entrepreneurship. Next comes the theories which are related to investment, FDI theories. Theories where you talk about how money is coming to a particular country. So the multinational enterprises, which are the MNE here, is multinational enterprise. So these multinational enterprises which are there in a country, they usually operate based upon investment which is being made, because not much can be you don't have so much of money that can be invested by your own self, or taking loans and borrowings and grants and all are not sufficient. It is definite that you have to invite investors to invest in your company. So therefore FDI will come here. Now when FDI comes, you can have advantages which can be in terms of monopolistic, which can be in terms of internationalized, which can be also in terms of your the paradigms, different types of paradigms, dominations that you have got. So coming to the first one under the FDI theory is monopolistic advantage, where you are talking about uh, having control over the IPRs, having control over the asset of the company. So the resource of your advantage will come from your all intellectual properties, knowledge, patents, uniqueness that you have. You are the sole owner of all this. So you are um, now you can invite companies to invest in you because you are the only person who has got the patent or the knowledge or IPR in that particular industry. Like the example given here is about Novartis, where there are many global investors who invest in Novartis, and these people invest because Novartis has got monopoly power in pharma, in terms of patents, in terms of knowledge that they have, R&D that they do. They have lot of expertise in that particular area. So you see, you talk about the monopolistic advantage which comes there. So most of the investors also will get attracted. If I was an investor, I would most of the if I was the investor, I would also take advantage and invest in a firm where they have got a resource with them. They have got all these capabilities. So FDI will come naturally to them. Then internationalization theory related to FDI. This is not firm internationalization. Don't get confused. Firm internationalization theory was how firm goes about internationalizing. This is FDI internationalization, where how investment comes to a company. So this will talk about, how the companies are able to manage their value chains. In strategic management, you have got a concept of value chain where you talk about what kind of inbound activities a company has got, what kind of processes are there, and what are the outbound activities. So your procurement of raw material, recruitment of people, search for suppliers. These will be your inbound activities. So you do it first stage. Then you do transformation, produce products by using labor material. That is your process. Then outbound will be search for logistics, distribution, so that these produced products can be sold. So very briefly, I told value chain. So when you talk about value chain, you are talking about internalizing this particular value chain so that these multinational companies have got a direct ownership which will provide the company with great control over its foreign operations. So whatever is your value chain, you have got to internalize that particular value chain. So here in China, if you see the example which is being given here, Intel is owning much of it, the value chain which is there, because they possess the knowledge, the patents, the other assets, which should not be used, no, misused illegally by other rivals who are there in the market. So Intel will own and control all types of intellectual property in IT industry and in semiconductor industry. So the value chain in terms of your outbound and inbound activities are controlled by them. So you have the internalization of this particular FDI in terms of value chain. Then you have the Dunn's paradigm, as I was telling, uh, which was given by Dunnan, and he speaks about whether a firm will enter a foreign country through investment or not. It depends upon advantages which they will have. If I am an investor, I run a company in India. I think about investing in a company in Korea. Now, why will I think about investing in that country, in that company, if I have advantages? So, what are these advantages? First advantage is ownership. So, do I have ownership over knowledge, skills, capabilities, physical assets, which the firm has got? Ownership, which is there in the firm. Then, second will be location advantage. Nearness to all types of endowment, natural resources, labor, knowledge workers. So, location advantages which will be there. Then, advantage of internalizing, because your company and that company is different. So, how does the value chain of your company and that company get bound, combined, or get, if not combined, at least go hand in hand? So how are you going to internalize value chain of that company with yours, because you are investing in that company? This is called Dunn's paradigm, given by Dunnan. uh, then there's an example for this particular paradigm. This talks about why firms invest in foreign countries companies. If they have these advantages only, they will invest. Otherwise, they will not invest. Okay. So, so here, if you see, HP is a company uh, which is into your hardware and software manufacturing related to computers and laptops and all, printers, things which are to do with information technology. So they possess a large base of knowledge and patents in electronics industry in terms of your printers and in terms of your laptops and desktops and all. So they have ownership. So they have advantage in ownership. Then they have a location advantage. In case HP is desiring to manufacture in India, in India or in China for that matter, then because HP is not a Chinese company, Hewlett Packard, HP is actually based in USA. So when you have this company having to choose China, then why will they go and invest in there, and then they desire to make a manufacturing plant in China and then start operations there and integrate that value chain with their value chain only if they have some advantages, right? So ownership advantages, location advantages, or you have advantages of internalizing. So then HP, if they get all these advantages, they will enter China through the route of FDI. If these advantages are given to them by India, then they will enter India through the route of FDI. So, right, these are all the theories which we have discussed, which are related to your international trade. So, just a quick look at the diagram which we had earlier, the theories. On we two theories are there still. That is product life cycle theory and new trade theory. This is there in another PPT. So I'll show you that PPT. Give me a moment. Uh, International product life cycle and new trade theory. Uh, Paul Krugman, his theory of new trade, what he tells, he tells new theory, new geography, and there are a lot of troubles related to manufacturing. So actually, the original motivation to propound the new theory is from all old theories only. Only thing is that new theory is related to new geography. Whatever is old is new again. That is why it is called as new trade theory. There is nothing new completely which he told. What he simply said is, related to things like once upon a time, whatever was looked as competitive advantage is nothing but description of trade. Then there's hardly any difference, when you see over the time that what is exported and what is imported between the countries, then you would hardly have to see any difference between the two. So, because geographical boundaries are becoming narrower and narrower, and by trade seems to be similar between countries of the world. So, countries of the world, the trade is becoming similar and similar. So, you are basically talking about localization of trade, not globalization of trade as such. So, what was not being told by Adam Smith, what was not being told by Ricardo, Krugman added one thing in the theory where he spoke about market structure, which was not explained by others. What is the market structure? Because depending upon the market structure, also you will understand how firms are going to compete with one another. So, whether you have a market structure which is perfectly competitive, market structure which is your monopoly, market structure which is oligopoly, so you would basically think about this theory in terms of understanding a new trade where the newness is assigned to two things. One, geography. Second, what kind of a market is there. So whether you, how can you gain economies of scale depending upon the market theory which is being there, and what how do you understand this particular market theory itself. So based on these two things, Krugman gave this particular theory: economies of scale, market structures. He spoke about these two things. Most of, see, nowadays markets, if you see, none of the market is a free market that is perfectly competitive. Neither is any market a monopoly. So all the markets that we are operating in are all monopolistic markets only, which are there. So the Krugman's model, if you see, more firms are offering more and more varieties of products. Why should a firm restrict themselves only to producing one? So let them produce as many as possible. That was what he said. And depending upon in whichever environment you operate, you are having your, you know, theories, which are, you're having your trade, which is being propounded by Krugman. And because this theory is of recent origin, Krugman himself is making a lot of what do you call changes in this particular theory to go about with. So this theory is of a very recent origin, and hence additions are still happening to this theory. Things to remember here is three: economies of scale that will come to the company, type of competition or market in which you are, assumption that we are all operating in a monopolistic market, and factor of production which is more prominent for you. So you choose which factor of production is more prominent for you, and then based on that factor of production which is prominent, you do. Then you have this particular thing to do with your what is this called, life cycle, international life cycle. So international life cycle, product life cycle theory, if you see, you were talking about nations exports which will eventually also become its own imports. So international product life cycle, that is being called as: first you produce to export, fulfill your domestic demand, produce to export. Once domestic demand is met, export happens, then foreign production will begin. So you are producing to send to other countries. Then when other countries are receiving it, other competitors also will start producing. So what are you doing? Foreign competition you are inviting in the export market. Then whatever with those foreign products, no, your consumers will start buying those. Are you understanding? This is like a vicious cycle where first, say for example, USA. So USA is producing something for domestic market. Then USA exhausted domestic market, then they are targeting your export. So they are producing to export. When they started exporting, UK, Europe, China, India, they all learned that, oh, we can produce this commodity and this is how US is doing it. So we will also start producing, all these four countries. Now, when all these countries are producing, again, US is facing competition from them. Then consumers in US, they are all importing these commodities, which are produced by Europe, UK, India, China. So what is happening? It is like circle. It's like going roundabout. That's called as international product life cycle theory, which is there where you speak about, how the countries of the world are actually first meeting domestic demand, producing to export, meeting competition in the export market, then again importing those products which are produced by others. So it is going roundabout like that. So it's four stages you have got related to that particular theory. Any questions in this? The ones which are related to theories. Very quickly, we'll proceed towards the next one, which is balance of trade and balance of payment. As students of MBA, you've been studying this since a long time, so this will be a very quick revision of your what is this balance of trade and balance of payment. If there are no questions in international theories. These are barriers. This, this is next class barriers. Uh, balance of- Yeah, so you have balance of payment, and part of it is balance of trade. If you understand balance of payment, balance of trade will be automatically dealt inside that. Now, when your country is dealing with other countries in the world, in what way are you dealing? Are you dealing with visible items that is called physical goods, which you export or import? So I'm importing laptop from HP. I am importing iPhone from US. I am importing Indian spices are getting exported from India. Pickles, spices, textile is getting exported. These are all physical goods which you can see. So I can see a laptop, I can see spices, I can see pickles, I can see textile cloth, I can see carpets, I can see chocolates. These are all physical goods which are getting exported, imported. This is your first item in your balance of payment called as visible item. Then you have invisible items where you talk about services. Services and goods are different from one another in terms of visibility, in terms of tangibility. You can touch, see, feel the visible items, whereas services you cannot touch and see, you can only feel. So these are called invisible items. Transport, medical services, banking, insurance, aviation. All these are all services which we are exporting, importing, but these are not visible. Our professionals go abroad, doctors from outside countries come and work here, logistics companies work across the border. So these are all called invisible items. You cannot see, but they are an important characteristic in your trade, invisible items. Third, you have items which are not goods and services, but they are money, movement of money, capital. So you pay something to somebody in the foreign country, or you receive something from somebody in the foreign country. For example, you have a sibling who's working, or you have your parents who's working in another country. They send you your expenses to be met. So that is your foreign capital coming into the country. Government of India borrowed loan from IMF. So government capital account borrowings, which will be there. These are called as money movements within the country's capital receipts. So in your balance of payment, these will be three items: visible items, invisible items, and capital transfers, which are the most of the competitive exams also ask a question on these, which will be there. Then you have your what is actually a balance of payment. So balance of payment, the definition goes there given by Kindleberger. They say it is nothing but systematic record of all the economic transactions between the resident of a country and between other countries of the world, residents of other countries of the world. And then it's a system of entering double. You don't record only single, only receipts, but you record receipts as well as payments. What did you receive? What did you give? So both you record. Continuation of the definition given by RBI. RBI says it is nothing but a systematic record of all the economic transactions of a country in term between the residents of the country and the rest of the world. So between Indians and between the rest of the world, whatever kind of transactions you have, that is your balance of payments. That is according to Reserve Bank of India, where you have, the transfers which are there. Then you have what are the features of this balance of payment? Systematic record, all transactions visible, invisible, for a particular period of time. It is generally an annual statement which is being made. So it is only for a particular period of time that you are making the statement. And then it adopts a double entry system. Students of MBA know, accounts. So you know the double entry system there. Every debit should have an equal credit. So whatever comes in should also go out. So you have a double entry system of record keeping. Receipts are recorded on credit side and payments are recorded on the debit side. Now, when you talk about the items in your balance of payment, a part of it is called as balance of trade, which is only to do with import and export. So import export of a country constitutes your balance of trade, which means the visible items. So whatever are the visible items that are there is a part of your balance of trade. Visible, invisible capital transfers are a balance of your payment. And you can have a favorable or an unfavorable balance of trade, surplus or deficit in your balance of payment. If your receipts are more, you have surplus. If your payments are more, you have deficit. If imports are more, your balance of trade is favorable. I'm sorry, if exports are more, that means more you are sending outside. So if exports are more, balance of trade is favorable. If imports are more, balance of trade is unfavorable. So surplus, deficit, favorable, unfavorable. These are the differences between balance of trade and balance of payment. So balance of payment includes balance of trade, visible, invisible capital transfer. Everything is balance of payment. But as I said, trade is only visible items. This will balance itself. This can be favorable or unfavorable. So what all does it include? Current account, capital account, plus or minus the balance. Exports minus imports. It is as simple as that. This way will just, I'll show you one, how does it look like? So what type of balances do you have? Merchandise, goods. Then in case you are exporting, importing goods, which are tangible, which you can see, it is called merchandise. If you are importing, exporting services, it is called as services only. Then what are you receiving from your asset which you have abroad, and what are the compensation which employees working abroad are paying back to the country? So you have income balance there. Then gifts, any types of gifts that you will get from the foreign country minus gifts that you will give to the foreign country. Then here you have capital account and current account when you speak about balance of payment. Capital account will record all types of international transactions between the resident of a country and the resident of another country, where you talk about, inflow and outflow of investments. What all does it include? Inflow and outflow of investment, short-term borrowings, lendings, medium-term borrowing and lending, capital account. Then it can have, these are the capital account transactions, FDI, portfolio investment, and any other capital. Then you have a reserve account where you call it as account with the International Monetary Fund. Then you have a special drawing right, and then you have monetary gold. These three put together is called as your reserve account. This is usually with the government. This is rested with the government of a particular country. So you can use this for settling international payments between monetary authorities of two countries. So you have this not with the individual citizens, this is with the government. This is like an account. So all kinds of errors and omissions which are there, you can offset it with the balancing figure that is there in the account. So this is how it looks like, your balance of payment. So you have export of goods, import of goods, export of services, import of services, anything that you're receiving in the form of interest, profit, dividend, anything that you're paying in the form of interest, profit, dividend, receipts which are coming only from outside. You are not paying equal unilateral receipts or unilateral payments. These are trade account. Then you have current account where you talk about foreign investment, short-term investment, medium-term investment. Then you have investments which are made abroad, short-term, medium-term investments which are there. The balance of all this will be your capital account balance, which will be there. Then depending upon plus or minus, you will have change in your reserves, whether it will be deficit or whether it will be surplus. Finally, this should balance. So total receipts is equal to total payments. This balance of payment can also have disequilibrium. As I said, they can be a surplus or they can be a deficit. If your receipts are more, it is called surplus, which means it's positive. If your payments are more than your receipts, then it is deficit, which you have in your balance of payment. Why does this deficit happen? It can be because of less exports. It can be because of devaluation of currency, natural calamities which are there, more capital movements out from your country which are there. Business cycle is very bad and fluctuating, recessionary tendencies in an economy, Those things will cause your balance of payment disequilibrium. Then how do you correct this disequilibrium? The company can adopt methods of correcting the disequilibrium by adopting an appropriate monetary policy, which is by the central bank of any country. Um, you can also go about by doing changes in the fiscal policy, which is to do with taxation, so that depending upon taxation, government can get more or spend more. So fiscal policy can change. Exchange rate depreciation can also be adopted, which means you're reducing the value of your currency in relation to the foreign currency, because of which import will become costlier and export will become cheaper. So people will hesitate to import, but export is become cheaper, no? So outside people will want to buy more from your country. So that is called exchange rate depreciation. Through that also you can correct your balance of payment through devaluation of currency, lowering the value of currency in terms of foreign currency which is there. Or you can also do deflation. The money which is circulating in the economy, you can reduce the quantity of money circulating in the economy which is there. And also exchange control, put restrictions on people who are importing. Through that also you can correct your balance of payment. These are money wise. Other than monetary, you can also do export substitution, export promotion and import substitution, in order to have an equilibrium in your balance of payment. This has been a topic, which has been there since a long time in commerce and business management. Students have been studying this. That's why I gave a running reference to it, your balance of payment and balance of trade. Next session, we will talk about tariff and non-tariff barriers, and then we will go back to your foreign exchange rate fixation and foreign currency management. We'll stop for this for today. Any questions? Tariff, not
Madam,
yes.
difference between FDI and FII.
Yesterday also I told, FDI is a direct investment which a foreign investor makes in a particular company outside his country. Direct investment which a foreign investor makes in a company which is not in his own country but another country. So Bill Gates, if I set up a new company and Bill Gates is investing in my company, then that is called foreign direct investment. Investor investing in my company directly, which is not originated in his country. That is foreign direct investment. Then you asked which one, difference between FDI and
FII,
FII,
institutional investment.
institutional investments. Foreign institutional investment is a foreign investor doesn't know in which company he has to invest, but he knows that he has to invest in a particular country. So choice of company he doesn't want to make, but he wants to be secure enough to understand that this money goes in the hands of those people who rightly deserve. So what he will do, instead of directly investing in a company, he will invest in a recognized, regulated institution in that country. Then that institution will in turn invest in the company. So if Bill Gates wants to give money to IT sector in India, he will not give directly to the IT company. He will give to IDBI, Industrial Development Bank of India. Industrial Development Bank of India will call for applications for grant of subsidies, loans, grants to IT companies under this no investment which came from Bill Gates. So then these companies which will apply to IDBI, they will release amount. So what is this foreign investor doing? He's not investing directly in the company. He is investing in an institution. That institution in turn is investing in the company. That is FDI and FII.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. And investing in mutual funds, is it FII?
It can be domestic within your country. If the mutual fund is operating in your own country, it is domestic, no FII.
Invested by foreigner in mutual funds, in our mutual.
Yeah, then it will be FII because he doesn't know where the money is going. It is going in a portfolio. So therefore it will be FII on.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Is it okay, madam?
Yes.
Yes,
Sorry?
yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, nothing. So if it is 10 minutes,
Yeah,
I'm
we'll
so.
close for the day.
Yeah, thank you,
Sir,
madam.
yeah,
Yeah,
I'll get back to you for tomorrow's class. Maybe I have 10 to 11 another session in my college.
okay.
So I'll post a message to you. So based on
No,
that,
otherwise, no, you even students are there. No? If you can able to start early by 9:30, even it's okay.
10:30
It's
you're
okay.
saying, sir?
No, no, 9:30.
9:30.
Students
That's
are
what I will just
yes.
check up and then I'll inform you over the WhatsApp.
Okay.
What
Yes.
is the state?
Students also remain distance. If it is there, you can start by early. Okay, Kumar
Okay, okay, okay,
and Mani. Yes,
okay.
ma'am. Thank you.
Otherwise, the sessions go at 12 also, 12 to 2, and then 2 to 4.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, fine. Fine. I'll
So we
inform you.
that schedule is already prepared, so we don't have time to deviate. And
Acha,
if
so 10
we
to
have
12
to,
every day should be my class only.
yes, ma'am.
Oh, I see. Okay, okay, fine.
So if it is early hours means even it's okay.
No, I'll try to make adjustment in my college class so that I
Okay,
begin their class at 11:30 or something.
fine, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.